A relentless series of atmospheric river storms has plunged much of western Washington into a state of emergency, triggering catastrophic flooding, structural levee failures, and one of the largest mass evacuation efforts in the state's history. As of Tuesday evening, over 100,000 residents remain under evacuation orders or warnings as record-breaking rainfall continues to overwhelm river systems from the Canadian border down to the South Puget Sound. The crisis began in mid-December when a powerful atmospheric river, a narrow corridor of concentrated moisture in the atmosphere, stalled over the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, ma'am.
This fire hose of tropical moisture dropped nearly 6 to 10 inches of rain in less than 48 hours across the lowlands, with much higher totals in the Olympic and Cascade Mountains. The rapid rainfall, combined with unseasonably warm temperatures that melted the early season snowpack, sent an unprecedented volume of runoff into the state's primary river basins. By Monday, major rivers including the Skagit, Snohomish, Green, and White Rivers had reached major flood stage, surpassing records set during the historic floods of 1990 and 2006. The situation turned dire on Monday night when structural failures were reported in critical flood defense systems. A significant section of the levee along the Green River in Tukwila suffered a partial breach. Water surged into industrial zones and residential neighborhoods, forcing the immediate closure of portions of Interstate 5 and paralyzing regional logistics hubs. In the city of Pacific, a levee failure sent a wall of water into neighborhoods, trapping residents in their homes. Rescue teams using swiftwater boats worked through the night to pluck dozens of people from rooftops. To the north, the city of Burlington became an island as the Skagit River crested at a staggering 36 feet, approximately 11 meters. Emergency crews worked frantically to sandbag downtown areas, but many secondary dikes were overtopped. Governor Bob Ferguson, who assumed office earlier this year, declared a statewide state of emergency on Sunday. On Tuesday, he officially requested federal assistance and deployed the Washington National Guard to assist in search and rescue operations and levee reinforcement. This is an unprecedented hydrological event, Governor Ferguson stated during a press briefing at the State Emergency Operations Center. Our priority is life safety. If you are told to evacuate, leave immediately. We are seeing water levels rise in minutes, not hours. The Washington State Department of Transportation has reported dozens of road closures due to landslides and washouts. Critical mountain passes, including Snoqualmie, I-90, and Stevens, US 2, have been intermittently closed due to debris flows, effectively severing the main terrestrial links between eastern and western Washington. The human toll of the flooding is becoming increasingly evident. In King and Pierce counties alone, over 15,000 people are currently housed in emergency shelters managed by the American Red Cross and local community centers. Thousands of families have seen their homes inundated with mud and contaminated floodwater. At the height of the storm, over 250,000 utility customers were without power as high winds accompanying the rain brought down trees and power lines. The Valley region, Kent, Auburn, Tukwila, which serves as a major distribution hub for the West Coast, has seen operations grind to a halt, with warehouses flooded and rail lines submerged. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service Seattle warned that while the heaviest rain has moved south for a brief 12-hour window, another pulse of moisture is expected to arrive late Tuesday night into Wednesday. The ground is 100% saturated, said a lead hydrologist at the NWS. Even a moderate amount of additional rain will immediately translate into runoff. We are particularly concerned about the Skagit and Snohomish rivers, which are slow to recede and may crest a second time later this week. Authorities are urging residents to take the following actions. Sign up for King County emergency alerts or your local county equivalent. Do not walk or drive through flooded areas. Turn around, don't drown, remains the primary safety directive, as just 6 inches of moving water can knock an adult off their feet. Ensure you have a go bag with essential documents, medications, and supplies for at least 3 days. As Washington begins the long road to recovery, the focus remains on the immediate threat of rising waters. This event is already being cited by climate scientists as a stark example of the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events in the Pacific Northwest.
Wow, look at that.
Meanwhile, the city of Burlington, long known as the commercial heart of Skagit County, has been transformed into a sprawling inland sea. Following days of relentless precipitation fueled by a record-breaking atmospheric river, the Skagit River has surged over its banks and compromised secondary dike systems, forcing a catastrophic inundation of the city and surrounding farmland. As of Tuesday evening, Burlington remains under a mandatory Level 3 Go Now evacuation order, with emergency officials describing the situation as the most significant hydrological threat to the region in over a century. The Skagit River, the largest drainage basin in the Puget Sound, began its rapid ascent late Sunday night. By Monday afternoon, the river gauge at Mount Vernon, which monitors the flow impacting Burlington, recorded a staggering crest of 36.5 feet, surpassing the historic 1990 flood levels and pushing the aging levee infrastructure to its absolute breaking point. Meteorologists from the National Weather Service noted that the disaster was a perfect storm of conditions. A massive warm front accompanying the rain caused rapid snowmelt in the North Cascades, sending millions of gallons of runoff into the upper Skagit dams, which were eventually forced to increase spillway releases to maintain structural integrity. While the primary levees protecting the city center held through the initial surge, disaster struck early Tuesday morning. A boil, a leak caused by water pressure under the levee, was detected near the Dike District 12 perimeter, despite frantic efforts by National Guard troops and local volunteers to shore up the area with thousands of sandbags. A secondary dike near the bend of the river failed. The resulting breach sent a torrent of murky, debris-laden water into the Burlington Business District. Within hours, the intersection of Burlington Boulevard and Rio Vista Avenue, usually a bustling corridor of commerce, was submerged under 4 feet of water. The Skagit County Sheriff's Office coordinated a massive evacuation effort involving air assets and swift water rescue teams. We had people who thought they could ride it out, but the speed at which the water entered the city was terrifying, said Captain James Miller of the Skagit Search and Rescue. By Tuesday afternoon, over 20,000 residents from Burlington and the neighboring town of Mount Vernon were displaced. Rescue helicopters from the U.S. Coast Guard and Naval Air Station Whidbey Island were seen hovering over residential neighborhoods, winching stranded citizens and their pets from rooftops as the floodwaters rose toward second-story windows. Emergency shelters have been established at the Skagit County Fairgrounds and local high schools in Sedro-Woolley and Anacortes, which sit on higher ground. However, these facilities are already reaching maximum capacity. The flooding has effectively severed the Interstate 5 corridor, the primary north-south artery for the West Coast. The Burlington Bridge, Skagit River Bridge, has been closed to all traffic as engineers monitor the structure for scour damage caused by heavy logs and debris slamming into the piers. The Cascade Mall and surrounding big box retailers, which serve as a major tax base for the county, have sustained massive interior water damage. Thousands of acres of prime Skagit Valley farmland, famous for tulip and berry production, are now under several feet of silt and contaminated water. Power substations in the lowlands have been de-energized to prevent fires, leaving the entire city in darkness. Even as the rain begins to taper off into light showers, the danger is far from over. Hydrologists warn of ponding, where water trapped behind levees cannot drain back into the river channel. It may take weeks for the city to be pumped dry. Furthermore, environmental officials are concerned about the contamination of the floodwaters. Overflowing septic systems and industrial runoff have turned the flood zone into a biohazard, and residents are being warned not to come into contact with the water without protective gear.
The water is coming up pretty fast.